how do we work together and how do we show the value?
You just mentioned I'm responsible for. No, I'm not. It's the team.
So then it's like playing with fire while holding a can of gasoline on the other hand.
Say, hey, listen, we need to rethink our roles because how they were in the past, like this one after the other, that's not the future. I'm not a developer, so I'm not an automation super genius.
My customer is not paying for tests, right? My customer is paying for features. QA was like a good starting point for a developer.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. For me, in the past, it was a lot about that I haven't seen the value of it. This talk will talk a bit more about quality assurance and the biased use. And for that, the first question I would have to Pia is, what's actually a QA doing all the time? What are your tasks?
Well, that's a very good question. And it's a perfect point to start our discussion because there is a lot of misunderstanding or also a lot of change going on in the last few years already with that whole agile transformation going on in a lot of organizations right now. So what I'm actually doing the whole day is really I'm trying to help my team to deliver a good quality, a good product. So I try to help them to avoid bugs. So before even writing code, we want to make sure that we've understand everything correctly. So I'm the one asking a lot of questions, reviewing specifications, helping my development colleagues to write good tests so they can check already on their machines that everything works fine. And yes, of course, I'm also doing testing, but don't misunderstand it with just executing some manual stuff. So that's not testing at all. There is much more. You have to think about how you design a good test, how you clever test your product, your system, what are dependencies. So there is so much brain work to do before you can even execute a test. And then it's and then of course it is what do we want to execute manually, what do we want to automate, you know, all that stuff. On which level, on which test level do we want to test certain things. So as you can see, I could talk quite long about this. Yeah, what's your impression?
I think so far you mentioned a lot of different points which are regarding of the team and within a team, right? But afterwards, I mean, you're also responsible or kind of responsible for all what happens afterwards. So in terms of release cycles, in terms of incidents from production and feeding that back to the team, which requires quite a lot of business knowledge as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I just want to hang into where you just mentioned I'm responsible for. No, I'm not. It's the team. So that's really important. And I'm pretty sure we'll get to that later in our discussion. It's not the QA's responsibility or the testing team's responsibility that things run smoothly in the end, or it's always teamwork, and that's where we are at the moment. There's so much change, and also mindsets have to change to understand you cannot be, or me in that case, I cannot be responsible for things I have no control of. You know, when I'm not writing the code, how should I be able to be responsible? So sorry, I just got a bit away from your initial question. Yes, I have also a lot to do with how do we manage our releases, when do we go live with what, and how do we actually deal with incidents coming from production. So there are also certain processes, and there is no, you know, this is the perfect process for your organization. It always depends on your product, on who are your users, what's the risk behind, are you in a security or in a regulated environment, like are you delivering software for medical devices, for example, so that's super critical, or in the transportation business, like or are you building a software game, for example? So that always depends.
I think those are a lot of different topics you're working on. And in the past, myself, I had the pleasure to work with a QA within the team and had that real close boundaries and hands-on work with each other, and that like responsible for the team aspect for quality, right? How was it from your point of view, Rodrigo? How did you experience it in the past? And you mentioned in the beginning you had kind of a different view on the role, or also for the image of a QA, right?
Yes, initially, I used to think that a QA engineer was just the person responsible for testing, make sure that us developers built the right thing and built it right. Not only built the right thing, but as I progressed, I learned the hard way that devs often they live inside of their own bubble, right? So we get too close to the problem that we're solving, that we get tunnel vision mostly. So we end up with a solution that will fit the requirements, but we more often than not we forget to consider edge cases. And in my opinion, that's one of the great contributions that a QA will provide. And as I said, in the past, I had the unfortunate experience or trauma, if you may refer to that way, of working in a team that had zero QA. So then it's like playing with fire while holding a can of gasoline on the other hand. So you don't know when things may explode and you have no control over it. Currently, I'm having the privilege of working with a QA engineer with us in our team. Not for very long, unfortunately, because the previous QA engineer left. But from the limited interactions I had with him, he was mostly focused on running, on taking care of test scenarios that would require more than simply using the IDE tools that are available for a developer. So for example, as a developer, I generally do everything that I can execute on my IDE, right? So running unit tests or limited component tests or integration tests. But if something requires an external tool to execute, like some end-to-end test or something like that, that's when I tend to draw the line and say, okay, a QA engineer is much more capable than I am to do it. So that's how I see it.
Just a bit as a follow-up question, or two follow-up questions. You mentioned that you had you learned it the hard way to understand what quality assurance means and also to work with it. Could you share us what you mean by that exactly? Did a project went downside, or what was the outcome, the specific outcome of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this past experience where I had no QA was I was working for a very small company. So we were 3 people. We were all responsible for everything. So there were no like specialists or anything. But the management saw no value in testing or quality assurance because management was not technical. So management was very market oriented, so business related, nothing technical. So what happens is we need to push features as quickly as possible, and we had zero safety net. So we have to trust that our work is functional, right? It meets the requirement, but frequently we would bring down production when we had to rush something for the business. Oh, we need this feature, we need it now, the customers are requiring it, and then I had no way to actually test it before we go live. I tested to my best abilities on my local machine, and then it's like, okay, let's deploy and see what happens. So yeah, that's not a desirable way to work, in my opinion.
You just mentioned a very interesting point. You three guys were responsible for everything, right? Which matches what Pia just said in the beginning. But why does it come that QA is there never mentioned? Because in theory, you would be responsible for it, right? As a team, and it would be a topic as well as a team, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. But from what I saw, businesses that are not tech savvy, they tend to not see a lot of value on tests, because if you think as a business person, you would say, okay, what is my customer paying for? My customer is not paying for tests, right? My customer is paying for features. So I want to deliver features as quickly as possible. So why waste time with tests? So I'm not saying this is right. I think this is completely wrong, but that's very common. I've seen this approach many times.
I also heard
me
that
too.
a lot. Yeah, I also heard that a lot, and perhaps a good point to argument is, yeah, the customer pays for features, but he also pays for a working product, right? And that's a lot of the people don't really see as a mandatory first place, right? Sure, we pay for features, but if you cannot use it, then it's not there and usable. So perhaps to come back to you, Pia, from the past, and also what Rodrigo told, yeah, he's writing tests and stuff like that. What's your like point of view? How much developers actually do their work, and which kind of quality does it have?
Well, I have to say, so I'm really happy that Rodrigo is writing tests. That's awesome, and this is not usual. You know, this is not how everybody does it. So in my project, very often I met developers saying, you test it then afterwards. I'm only developing, and then I just give it to you for testing. So they don't write tests at all. So that's already a good thing that developers write tests, and that's where, and I think like a developer, I mean, his or her specialty is writing code, is writing cool software products. Yeah, that's and testing or making sure that he or she wrote it the right way, that it actually does what it should do. And to improve the testing already on that low stage, then the QA specialist can help and support to make it even better, to avoid things coming to the next stage, and to to just ensure that we have a faster time to market. You know, because when I then at the last test stage find stuff, because I'm then doing the test, for example, Rodrigo could have done already on a unit test level, then we are far too late in the process, and then I need to send it back, and everything needs to start again. So our time to market is increased for no reason. So that would also, Rodrigo, be a good tip to tell to management when they say they don't want to spend resources on testing or quality assurance. In the end, it saves them time when you do it properly, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, perhaps we already went a bit into that discussion about what the image is and the expectation is from the different roles, like for, QA from developers and vice versa. And for myself, I also dealt a lot with common misconceptions about what this person should do. Honestly speaking, from the beginning, when I did development, I was like there, yeah, okay, I develop my stuff, I test my stuff, and most of the time there was no QA, and when there was a QA, I tried to include him the way that he could extend my tests on a certain degree, on a perhaps higher level, and I expected him to give me feedback based on it. And at the end, perhaps he has more of a conceptual testing cases, so on a higher level. Me, as a developer in the past, I mean, I was focused on stories, right? I didn't have that picture of the full features and across the product of the life cycle. So does that fit with your view, Rodrigo, what you had for expectations toward QA? Or was it for you, as you mentioned before, just testers? Or was that something you thought should be your own responsibility and you don't need that role at all? Or what are like strong image like slogans you have towards QAs? I mean, not only good, but also bad, right?
Yeah, it's important what you mentioned. The way the what you said about devs being too focused on user stories, right? So the real value of having a QA, it's not when the problem is simple, right? Because when you're working on a simple problem, a developer can just have a complete understanding of the problem space in his head, and he can do a decent job testing it, let's say. But as soon as you enter the realm of complex problems, which are the interesting ones, right? Then it's pretty much impossible for any developer to like have all the problem space in his head because there's just too many moving parts, right? So if you're in a certain component of a system, sure, the developer will have a deep understanding on that component and have a more high level view of how it interacts with other components, right? On the other hand, when you pass this along to a QA to test, the QA will not be so deeply inserted into that same problem space as the developer is. So he will be able to see in a different scope, more like how the changes that this developer implemented could potentially affect the system as a whole. And then he's more capable of thinking of scenarios where that change could bring a problem. So and that's really the way I see the value of a QA engineer or QA team.
Right, but that's now your point of view, right? But when you look back to yourself, like 5 years ago, where you wasn't yet so convinced about that role or didn't know it that well, what was your thinking in the beginning? Was it also like changing depending on the QA you had within the team, or didn't you have a strong feeling towards QA?
Yeah, my idea about QA was purely my own imagination because I never had a QA to work with. So initially, when I started working as a developer, I had this wrong view that a QA was like a good starting point for a developer. And then if you do a good job as a QA, you can move to become a developer. So I don't know why I had this weird view on my mind, but I guess it was when I was looking for the first jobs, I saw that like there were more openings for entry-level QA than entry-level developers at the time. Maybe that influenced my view a little bit. But yeah, and because of that, I had, and also, yeah, I worked in a project where the QA team was actually just testers. And that also contributed to my view of it. So it's like, we just build our stuff and then we forward to the QA team. QA team will run it on a staging environment, do their own tests, some automated, some manual. And then when they move forward to the operations team to deploy it, right? And if it's not okay, they send it back with a bunch of defects on Jira, right? So that was all of my view for QA before I dug deeper into the field.
You went to a very interesting point about how you organize within the team and the work, right? But let's discuss that afterwards, because first I would be interested towards Pia's like point of view, how she sees the image against QA, but there are like, yeah, developer's mind about QA, and perhaps also from experience, what were like hard statements which you perhaps would like to hear publicly say something about it and correct it, perhaps, or agree with it?
Yeah, sure. So what Rodrigo mentioned, I also saw it quite a lot of times in my career, that people said, yeah, I'll try as a tester and then we'll see where that goes to. So business analysts, requirements engineers, developers. And I thought that's something weird to me, because, you know, I'm a quality personality. That's it. I was always like that. When I was a child, I had no idea I would end up in IT business, but it's super cool. I'm super happy. However, I met a lot of testing and QA people who did not have that passion. And I thought, really, am I the only one? That cannot be. And working with those kind of people, I understand the view of developers, mainly developers, because they have a very strong opinion. That is my experience. And mostly it's not the most positive opinion about testing and QA people. So I had, or I'm always in every new project where I don't know the people, I need to fight first for myself and to open up and to get them to open up and to see, she's first of all, she's a cool person. So I mean, although it's obvious, and her topic is important and we should listen, and then we can all together make a cool product and work more efficiently and better and just be more successful as a team. And that always takes time. And so on one hand, I can really understand why people are very unsure about, you know, there comes a QA person, there comes a testing person. So who is that person? What is he or she doing? And will that be the 100th person coming in and telling me my code is shit? Because I also met those testing people. And I mean, when you come into a team and just tell the team what you do is just not good quality, it's shitty, it's buggy, whatever, you don't make new friends. I mean, that's just clear. And this is not about testing. This is just about human beings and how we interact with each other. So when I come into a team, I don't start with this is not good. I try to understand how they work, why they work like this. And then, you know, slowly, step by step, just bring up ideas, show them how I would test stuff, explain why I would. And this is how you can change the impression people have about QA people and testing people. But you need to be, as a QA specialist, you need to have the courage to do so. And you
Perhaps
not giving up.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. For me, in the past, it was a lot about that I haven't seen the value of it, right? Because I worked together with QA personalities or testers where I worked on a story. I talked about business requirements and stuff. And when we discussed then the topic and tests came back, a lot of the feedback was more regarding requirements they haven't understood instead of missing parts. But obviously,
I think I got it.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, it is important that we have those kind of discussions, right? About requirements and the value of it. But in general, the value which is delivered by the QA was for me most of the time just too late, right? And that goes into the discussion we had before from Rodrigo, right? About how do we work together and how do we show the value, or you as a QA specialist or me for current projects as well, how can we show the team the value so that they actually benefit from it, and not being like someone who's just coming and saying, yeah, but I don't understand this, and the developer needs to explain it like the third time, because it's not a team, right? Most of the times in agile environments as we work, it's just like a bit structured tasks handovers, to not use other terms. So I think that's a very important question we should also answer on how we go forward and discuss with each other.
Yeah. So maybe one thing to come back to how people see my role. I'm also running against walls with QA people. So they also some of them don't understand my approach and don't support my approach, because they do exactly what you just mentioned, asking for super detailed requirements, everything specified until every little detail is super clear. And I mean, in our days, in agile organizations and setups, that doesn't work anymore. I mean, yeah, you can try to do some kind of waterfall in Scrum, but it just makes it even more stressful than it already is when you do traditional waterfall. Yeah, so I'm also, I also have to convince those people to say, hey, listen, we need to rethink our roles, because how they were in the past, like this one after the other, that's not the future. And if you want to stick to that, then you will most probably run into problems, because that role won't exist anymore, or not this many people will be required in such roles. So you should think about, redesign your role and find another way how to bring in those super valuable skills. I mean, those skills are so important. But it's a mindset change, and it takes time.
In general, I think we already discussed quite a lot of different topics, and in all of those different topics, we can continue like days, probably. So to just sum it up, we talked a lot about the different images we have. We talked about a lot what our ideal experience would be to work within a team. We touched some points on how such collaboration could look like, right? But a big pillar we talked about was actually testing still. Nevertheless, we talk about quality assurance in general. So just as a statement from both of you, I would like to hear, Pia, from your total work you do, how much of a percentage is actually testing, roughly?
Now you ask me too quickly.
Yeah, the same question comes from Rodrigo afterwards. So whoever is faster and could say, depending on their work, how much percent is testing?
Well, it depends how you. It depends how you what's testing for you. When you only talk about test execution, then I don't know. When let's say 20%.
I think it's with definition, right? It's with. I mean, just execution is one part, but to have execute something, you also need to define it. So I would like put that together.
Let's say it's 50-50. So I'm at least 50% with avoiding bugs. Yep. So it's all before testing, and then I would say let's say half of the time, or 40% is then actual testing, designing, setting up stuff, executing. Yeah. And that's just, it depends, and it's just a very spontaneous answer.
What's your Rodrigo? What's your testing? If you look on your whole work you're doing, which parts consumes you with testing?
Yeah, I think I will be a poor example of an average developer and how much a developer tests, because I honestly like the part of testing, because that's when I'm sure that what I built works, right? And I personally, when I finish my development, what I hate the most is let me run the application to see if it works. I hate doing that. So I will invest more time into writing unit tests or integration tests to run locally to prove that it works instead of running the application, feeding data and seeing the behavior. I don't like doing that at all. So I'll go the extra mile to write those tests. And from my past experiences, I think I put something between, yeah, it's 1/3 of the time goes into testing, like from the conception of what do I want to test, implementation and execution is just pushing a button, because I will focus on the automated tests only. As I said, I don't like running it and debugging it and see, oh, it works. No.
Now, perhaps as a bonus question, for you, Rodrigo, how much does that change when you have a QA within the team? And vice versa for Pia, how much does that change regarding how much developers actually see your value within the team?
Yeah, that 1/3 I said is with a QA engineer in the team, because if I don't have a QA engineer, then I'm also responsible for feeding the end-to-end tests and maybe looking at contract testing and things like that. And then it would go close to 50-50, depending on the requirements. So if it's a heavily regulated industry like health, then yeah, it will go 50-50 testing, and sometimes even more, because I've seen requirements like, hey, we need 100% coverage. Then yeah, it can get wild.
I think that topic we should discuss on another occasion.
Yes.
What's about you, Pia?
Well, yeah, as you said, it depends on how the team sees my value and where I stand. So when I come into a team where they don't see the value at all, I will be doing much more testing, because I will first focus on need to make sure that the thing we built or they built works. And then, slowly that will shift, hopefully, if the people are willing to improve also on their side, then that shifts to doing actually to really shift left. Wanted to use this buzzword also in our conversation, to actually shift left and to bring in my skills earlier in the process. So I cannot give you a percentage, but I also started in teams and I was 100% doing testing. And nothing to do with avoiding bugs or building quality. Yeah.
Right. So when I summarize it, which is counterintuitive to most of the people, everyone actually tests less when we work together, and we're actually more efficient in doing our core job, which we are doing or which we are good at, and probably are actually more effective in doing our stuff when we share those responsibilities and work hand in hand. Would you see that as a good outcome of our discussion today, perhaps?
Absolutely. I fully agree with you.
Yes, likewise. Like having the team, having product-based teams with all the capabilities inside of the team will certainly enable like a much quicker time to market and a higher quality product in the end.
Cool, thank you very much. So we three found an agreement on how it could look like, or how we could see the way forward in changing teams in their behavior, and also in the image that QAs have, which developers have towards QA and vice versa. So now it's about you guys listening to our small conversation to sound off about our discussion. Did you like the format? Did you like the topics? And more importantly, do you agree, disagree with statements we did? And following the next cast or perhaps session together, which topic should we go into a bit deeper? Or have you other topics we could discuss which are very interesting to you guys? So with that, thank you very much for you, Pia and Rodrigo, for today's time and talk. And we'll see us the next time then. Have fun.
Thank
nice
you.
Day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.